Alright, welcome back to Roguetech, and welcome back to your first playthrough. So, today is going to be a fairly quick one. We're just going to go through the preliminary setup for the next mission, which we are absolutely going to be ready to drop on soon to you. So, popping the mech bay, we currently have the Stealth and the Locust, as well as, of course, our two vehicles, which, as soon as it loads, there we go. So we also have the Mockingbird and the Chasseur. We don't have any battle. No, we don't have any battle. Okay. So we've got two mechs, two vehicles. We'll look at what we're repairing shortly. In the barracks, we have Braver, Horik, Huldra, Narf, Rusalka, and Tainted Loki. So we've got already, without passing any time, we've got enough for the 4 units that we could drop theoretically right now. With that in mind, we'll check the command center in a moment. But before I forget, let's go pop in the store, which you should always do every financial report, just in case. So we got a couple vehicles here. Okay. Worth noting, because of the extravagant financial report, we do have very little to spend if we, say, fail on missions, have massive repair costs, need to completely rebuild mechs, etc. So we are going to be somewhat tight with our money in the shop. But if there is something very interesting, it might be worth modifying how much C-bill versus salvage we go for in one of the upcoming missions. Interestingly, the handheld rack 2 is once again there in the shop after the financial report, because the shop restocks every financial report. There's a medium laser, which we have 4, so we probably don't need that. There's a small laser. Small lasers can be very interesting, especially on quicker, shorter range mechs, that you can just get up into somebody and like flank them, shoot them in the back. Half a ton for 15 damage is very impressive, especially with no ammo, no chance of ammo explosions, and only generating 3 heat. So if you can get past the range weakness, small lasers are actually very potent, especially on Omni-mechs or other mechs that have just a ton of hardpoints to work with, that you can just throw a lot of small lasers and things together to just have a massive barrage alpha strike. In any case, there's also a sniper rifle, which is another 10-ton handheld. We're not going to be able to use 10-ton handhelds for a while, unless we get something like a TSM or something like that to increase our carry capacity. But the only mechs that have 10 tons of carry capacity across both of their hands is 100-tonners, unless you have something to increase their carry capacity. And actually, I'm just going to fact check myself real quick, because I believe the Stealth should have 4.5 tons of carry capacity. And, yep, 4.5. There we go. So, yeah. Unless you have 100-tonners, 10-ton weapon systems, handheld weapon systems, require something to make you be able to carry them sooner. There's actually a decent selection of engine cores, including a 460, which is cool. And the reason it's 8 million is because they're very rare. Incredibly large, like over 400. Like, standard cores for most assault mechs and lower is up to 400. But non-standard, like 450, 460, they're cool to have. But obviously, until you have a mech that's large enough and heavy enough to need that much, we're definitely not going to be picking it up. Engine heat sinks plus 9. Again, this is like a massive engine core thing. Yeah, so it would have to actually be like a 500 core or close to it to use engine heat sink plus 9. But it's there. More interestingly, the ammo section. So, double bin of LRM ammo. It's nice to have if you don't use Artemis, if you don't have specialty ammo, and if you have enough LRM tubes that you need 300 shots over the course of a mission. It's pretty nice to have plenty of ammo. Got AC-20, half machine gun. Now I really regret using a priority pick for that half bin of machine gun ammo, because boom, 625. We could have gotten it for 625 C-bills. So I would actually, if I had realized the Locust had a half bin of machine gun ammo, I would not have taken that, because even if we do end up using it on the Phoenix Hawk, half a ton on a Phoenix Hawk is not worth a priority pick, but half a ton on a Locust is worth a priority pick, in my opinion. But regardless, we could have just bought it for 625 C-bills. So I will absolutely chalk that up to a mistake. It was inadvisable. It's usually bad to take ammo, unless you specifically need the ammo to pick up a weapon system and use it immediately. It's usually not advisable to pick up an ammo bin unless there's something really special about it. SRM slugs is available, so if you just want to knock them down. Now, really interesting here is the slug ammo does not reduce crit chance, as far as I know. Which means if you specifically want to crit somebody out, especially if you have the special SRMs that we have, the whatever they're called, the ones with the higher crit chance, you can actually use the slug SRM ammo to reduce the damage you're dealing to structure, but still have the same crit chance. Which of course means that you're less likely to destroy with raw damage. And that's actually so interesting. I'm going to buy 2 bins. It's only 33,000, so that's fine. Counter missile ammo is also really good on SRMs early game. If you have an enemy who's using a single thunderbolt, or if you're dealing with somebody who has SRMs at all, you can literally just intercept all the missiles with a fairly high intercept chance, very reliably. And they do, by default, just intercept any missiles within range, not just targeted at the unit using it. The one thing to keep in mind if you're using the SRM counter missile ammo is that when you switch away from the SRM counter missile to try to use actual damage missiles again to shoot somebody with the SRM, it will be jammed for a turn, possibly more. The primary best use of the SRM counter missile is against thunderbolts and against arrows, especially the bigger ones, because as you can see, it deals 6 damage to missiles when it hits with an 80% intercept chance. So if you have an SRM 6, you have a high chance of doing at least 30 damage to missiles that are incoming. That's enough to take arrows out of the sky. So I'm actually going to buy a bin, just one, just to have on hand, just in case. And you can see that already, that buying 3 bins of ammo, we're already not making the financial report anymore, so we're definitely going to call it there for the shop. But let's pop over to the hiring hall just to see, and unlike the shop, which you saw the shop restocked, you'll notice that the hiring hall does not restock upon financial report. The only way to get a hiring hall to restock is to travel away from the planet you're on, or the system you're in, and then travel back, which obviously is not incredibly financially reasonable. So if we want to hire anyone else for any reason, and we don't want any of these we'll need to travel to hire anyone else. But again, we do still have all of our berths already filled with fairly, competent and reasonably useful mech warriors and vehicle pilots. So it's fine. It's completely fine. And so that's the financial report rolled over. Store restocked. Hiring hall did not. We looked at our mech bay. We checked the barracks. And now the last thing to check before we decide what to do with passing time and whatnot is look at the available contracts. And we actually got a slightly more even spread this time. So after the financial report, we now have 3 half-skull missions. We have 5 one-skull missions, and we have 3 1.5 skull missions, including yet another defend base. I do love early game defend base missions because there is just such a high chance of taking minimal damage. Although, I guess I need to say that as far as defend bases go, there's actually a very wide, disparate change of difficulty depending on what biome you're dropping on. So Badlands defend bases, like the deserty defend bases, are kind of like level for the most part. Like the maps that you will drop on defend base for like the deserty types of biomes are for the most part not really advantageous for the defenders or the attackers. They're just straight up, like, you have a bunch of allies and buildings to soak damage for you, and that's the thing that makes them better. The mountainous and high foliage defend bases, though, every single one of them, the defender has a massive advantage. High ground, cover, like, you are in great shape if you're dropping on a defend base in any of the wooded or, any kind of defend bases that are in woodlands and Terran planets and whatnot. Because you do have high ground, you have cover, you have ridge lines that are preventing the attackers from being able to freely attack you. There's also maps that have like water and things that the enemies have to go through to approach the base, while the turrets are shooting them with reduced evasion because they can't travel as fast. So the only defend base I would say that is actually quite difficult for the defenders is the urban defend bases, and I'm sure at some point I'll be dropping on one and I can just go over everything that is stacked against you on a urban defend base. But just keep in mind, urban biome defend base is not actually nearly as helpful and safe of a bet as most other biomes, and the more mountainous and forested the biome is, the easier the defend base is to manage. So, that's a lot. That's a lot of aside. All right, so let's just go through this and break this down in two ways, specifically to consider how we're going to plan our rebuilds and refits and repairs over the course of the next financial report. Because again, we need 822,000 C-bills just on hand at the end of this financial report, in addition to whatever we end up doing in the mech bay to repair, refit, whatever. So, as far as reward goes, a lot of the missions, almost every mission, has very high max salvage, but we don't really start getting into, significant C-bill payout until, well, with the exception of the escort and blackout that are one skull. We don't really get high C-bill payouts until we get to the 3 1.5 skull missions. The destroy base is 942 max, but for the most part, the half skull missions are never going to be great for C-bill payout. The recovery or target acquisition is very, very low max pay on these, and everything else has a very high risk of, well, other than the escorts, everything else has a high risk of taking a lot of damage, potentially losing mechs and things. So, yeah, as far as money goes, the defend base is the most lucrative C-bill payout that I'm seeing here. Now that we've looked at the, money side of things, let's consider the salvage side. We have a half skull assassinate. So, as I've mentioned previously, the thing with assassinates is that there are two types. One is the target is weak and all of its escorts are terrifying, and the other is the target is terrifying and all of its escorts are weak. And what I mean by weak is on par or slightly under what you would expect for that difficulty of mission. And what I mean by scary is a lot higher rated than whatever the mission is. So, dropping on this particular half skull assassination, we would be working against the Republic, the Republic, what's it called? The Republic of the Sphere. And I personally don't know offhand what exactly their tech level looks like compared to Inner Sphere houses, Comstar, etc., etc. But regardless, it's not going to be nearly as much as a gamble, or nearly as much of a gamble as fighting against planetary government. So the slightly advanced mech is likely to have, well, actually not even likely, it's almost guaranteed to have something interesting, even if it is just being a heavier chassis than what we would normally see on a half skull mission. And this is very much a we don't know exactly what we're going in against, but Usually the diplomat situation is the target itself is, unless I'm pretty sure it's the target itself is actually in a relatively standardized mech or vehicle for the half skull mission, or for whatever mission difficulty it is, and the escorts are a little bit stronger. I might be getting it mixed up with a couple of the like VIP commander, or like if it's some kind of military like general or something, it's always there in the big scary mech. But whenever it comes to diplomat VIP, I think this is the target is soft and the escorts are going to be above rated, or rated higher, stronger than what a half skull mission normally would be. But it is still very interesting, again, because we can just drop in, kill the target, and get out, and possibly make a pretty good payday with minimal damage and minimum, effort. Blackouts, as I've covered previously, are very much RNG focused of how good the salvage is going to be, how scary it's going to be, and the 1.3 million C-bills here with the 627 salvage is very, very interesting, especially since on a one skull blackout, with some of the units we have, I wouldn't be too worried about anything we might fight. So that is very interesting. And I'm gonna just say, like, during the next 30 days, during this next financial report, we are going to drop on this at some point, unless something crazy happens. Once again, target acquisition, very risky. Not super interested in risking facing a kill squad quite yet. But at some point in the coming weeks, I'm sure we will drop on a target acquisition once the situation is right for it. Destroy base, yeah, it's destroy base. The 1.5 skull battle, again, battles are very, very interesting. And I think since we need the 822,000 C-bills, it would be too risky at this juncture to drop in a 1.5 skull battle with what we've got. Not because we wouldn't be able to win, but because of the simple concept of, but at what cost? Like, I'm certain we could win a 1.5 skull battle, but we would have to, in order to get paid at all, we would have to destroy all of the enemy forces. So, this one, I'm pretty much going to chop off of the docket for this particular financial report. Perhaps the next financial report, once we have, the Omni Firestarter up and running as well, and have optimized our other mechs slightly. 1.5 skull blackout, again, very interesting for the payout side of things, and for the fact that RNG could drop and make it very simple. So, possibly going to do both of those. The 1.5 skull defend base is definitely the softest target here. We can get a lot of C-bills, especially if all buildings survive. You saw the payout increased by a massive percentage. So we can get all the C-bills we need from this one mission. But we don't need to do that yet, because I'm looking at this half skull escort. So on a half skull escort, specifically like one skull and half skull, the units we're going to be escorting are potentially actually going to be able to kill all of the enemies on their own. Kind of like the turrets in a defend base, except unlike the turrets in a defend base, we only fight one lance of enemies at a time. So we literally could potentially, with whatever, it is RNG focused, so we might get a vehicle with nothing but a single machine gun. But there's a chance that the targets that we're escorting may actually be fully capable of fighting this entire mission on their own, on a one skull or half skull. Just because if RNG, if RNG gives us any weapons, a vehicle with 2 medium lasers can kill a locust. Like, it's not nearly the case whenever you get to higher skull escorts, but as far as these in particular, it's very interesting. So I think what we're going to do is we're actually going to start... I think our plan for the initial mission we drop on for this financial report is going to be the half skull escort, and possibly, depending on how it goes, immediately dropping on the one skull escort as well. Alternatively, I could do it the other way around. But regardless, those two I think are going to be the first two missions that we drop on. We'll get some sea bills, we'll get good salvage, we'll have very low risk. And if things go really well, we could potentially drop on some of the higher rated missions just after a little bit of fatigue. I definitely want to play the one skull blackout at some point during the financial report. This is going to be our big sea bill payout, 100%. In part because if RNG gives you nothing before the first point, nothing at the first point, and you only have to fight a single lance at the second point, your salvage might be completely useless, like complete garbage. So just in the interest of a little bit of reassurance, we're definitely going to go for more money than salvage here on the one skull. And then based on that, we'll know what we need to do to drop on the defend base, how much sea bills and how much salvage we can afford to go for on the defend base. Like, these three missions at the start of the financial report will clue us into what we need and what we want to do for the 1.5 skull defend base. And then after that, after we've done all 4 of those missions, assuming we still have time left in the financial report, the half skull assassinate is very interesting. And I mean, the half skull blackout honestly isn't really worth it. The salvage is not likely to be incredibly lucrative. The sea bills are not going to be incredibly, helpful. But if we just need a filler mission, a half skull blackout's a pretty solid filler mission. Not super high risk, also not super easy. The rewards are, respectable, but definitely the half skull assassinate fitting that in sometimes. So altogether, I'm very happy with the missions we've got rolled. We have a lot we want to do. And we also, of course, while we have the Mech Tech bonus, the extra 4 Mech Tech, which is currently 25% of our Mech Tech, we want to get as much work done on as many things as we can during this 30 days to put that to the most good use we can. So we've got a lot of missions we want to drop on. And if we get lucky, especially with these first two, with the 2 escorts, we might be able to juggle fatigue with outfitting mechs and repairing mechs to be able to potentially get a lot done here. But since we're going to start with the half skull escort, I'm actually going to bump the fire starter down. So our goal, our primary goal at the start of this financial report is to leverage the higher mech tech to get the mechs we're ready to drop up and running so that we can drop them hopefully with minimal repair cost and time to then be able to make more changes, finish building the fire starter, etc., while doing hopefully minimal repairs between different missions while we're waiting on fatigue. So, to that end, I'm going to prioritize the Bushwhacker to get it up and running for one of the higher rated missions. I'm going to prioritize the Phoenix Hawk and the Hornet over the Firestarter because, again, the Hornet is just a teeny bit light because we ripped out some weight-saving stuff and some jump jets, and the Phoenix Hawk is fine. So in 3 days, we will have 4 mechs and 2 vehicles, and we'll be ready to start dropping on missions. And in 3 days, all of our people will also be out of fatigue. So there is some consideration that could be made of dropping on the half skull escort with just the stealth, the locust, and the 2 vehicles. And I likely would do that if we hadn't paid extra for the mech tech. But since we did, I'm kind of trying to leverage a bigger focus on the mechs and the work we want to do on them rather than just fatigue and payout. So to that end, in the interest of getting as little damage and as low repair cost as possible, I am going to wait the 3 days for the Phoenix Hawk and the Hornet. Actually, wait. Yeah. No, wait. Okay. We have the Phoenix Hawk now. I just thought for a minute. We have the 2 vehicles. We have the 3 mechs. That's 5 units. In our barracks, we only have 9 people. Dropping 5 units and then dropping 4 units is actually going to make the best use of our fatigue. And I know I just got done saying dropping more would be better for, you know, having less repairs and blah, 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 blah. But actually, based on the fact, again, that it's escorts. If it wasn't escort missions, I would be like, yeah, no, let's get our bushwhacker finished and let's do that. But because it is escort missions, and again, low skull, like half skull and 1 skull escort missions, there's a decent chance that the escort targets will actually be able to fend for themselves. Which means we can afford to drop less than our full possible allotment of units. So, in preparation for that, I am going to skill up only the skills that will directly improve our chances in the next couple missions. Because if possible, I would like to avoid leveling anyone up for this financial report, since we're paying a lot extra, and any increase to level of anyone but our commander will increase the salary. You can see the extravagant salary. So let me see if there's actually a... Does it now show? So right now he shows 51,478, and no, it does not update until you commit to the change. But if we were to give him piloting, that number would go up, which would increase the financial burden of the financial report. And since we're dropping on 1.5 and lower skull missions, I'm not terribly worried about having 1 additional piloting. And actually nobody really has experience to level up except for our commander. So we'll go ahead and... Commander, we have been dropping in the bushwhacker, so piloting is not the most interesting. So I think we will just go grab guts. That way we have higher panic roll, we have higher overheat shutdown, or higher chance to resist shutting down when we overheat, etc. And then I will take the point in gunnery. I will definitely take the point in gunnery. That will help us potentially kill faster, which will help us potentially save on repair costs. But again, the piloting on Tainted Loki, especially since he's the vehicle pilot, vehicles taking extra damage because we didn't have as much movement or whatever, not too worried about that. So that's what we're doing with the pilots. That's what we're looking at the command center. That's what we're doing with the mech bay. Yeah, the Firestar is going to take a while, so I think I am going to focus on... Well, I don't have to do anything until after we drop. So I'm going to drop on the first mission without any of those, with just the Phoenix Hawk, Stealth, and Locust with the 2 vehicles. We should be fine, even on the 1 skull escort, without our full lance being, ready to drop. So tomorrow, I will make the final decision of whether I drop first on the half skull or first on the 1 skull, but we are absolutely going to drop on those 2 missions back to back at the start of this financial report. But again, like I said, that's tomorrow. So for now, that's been your episode of Roguetech for the day. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, have a good one.